Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Kat.
This is Carl.
And this is Tom.
And welcome at long last to the return of Romulans Bearing Gifts. This could be episode 22. Mm-hmm.
It's stealth. We're not sure.
And for those who don't know, and can't remember if this was mentioned ages ago on this feed or not, but this was kind of the reason why the podcast came to be in the first place. Was well over a year ago. Me just thinking about Star Trek Discovery being out there on the horizon. So this was kind of the impetus to really... I mean, I wanted to do a Star Trek podcast for years, but I never seriously considered it until when we first heard that Discovery was going to be a thing on CBS. And that's kind of where... You know, I got the motivation to make this is a real thing, which is why the whole feed started in the first place. And we're here, and we're going to talk about the first 2 episodes of this new season, of this new series. And hopefully for the rest of the episodes, I think it's going to be a 13-episode Series 1. And even though we've only seen 2 episodes so far, there's kind of a lot to talk about. I mean, there's the episodes themselves, but then there's other Discovery things to ponder about. But, yeah, and for those who aren't aware, there's another podcast. There's multiple, but there's one in particular associated with this podcast, and that's the Sci-Fi Party Line, helmed by Kat, of course. And I know you guys have already discussed... this episode or this show to some degree prior to now, but I have no idea what you guys went over or where that went.
Well, it doesn't matter because, you know, having your special sauce added in is just going to make it a totally
it's gonna
different
be totally
experience.
different.
Totally experience. So we've been waiting.
And plus, Tom, in our recording, decided that he would only watch the second half of the freaking pilot.
Yeah, you
thing.
don't need to watch a whole show. I know the name of the show.
He was gonna come in with like opinions like, "Oh, they just started right in the middle of the damn show. I don't understand what's going on." Turns out, hey,
unbeknownst to him, he had missed the entire first episode. So now,
yes, I had to bow out in the middle of that one. So I've done 1.5 podcasts now after this.
Okay, no, all right, never mind. I can, okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
So I knew things were weird when they kept talking about the desert. Here and there, they talk about the desert scene, and I wasn't sure exactly what they were talking about. Well, so I had to bow out because I was going to have to start answering questions like, you know, when they asked, if they had asked me about the desert, I would have had to say, yes, well, a desert is a very interesting place in the world. It is a thing we all know.
You can't politician this, man. You gotta be there with us. You can't just make up mess. This is Star Trek, dude. You gotta keep it real.
Yeah.
All right,
gotta come with it.
Now I know we're probably gonna get into the weeds somewhere in this discussion, but before that happens, just each of you take turns. I'm just initial take feeling. Overall, watching these first episodes, kind of like your first reaction, just like in those opening 10 minutes or so, just what's your general feel?
First 10 minutes, how we feel?
No, like the whole episode as a whole, but also adding into that feeling just at the very start.
Quick summary. For me, I'm hopeful. I didn't see any big mistakes, and I was glad to see all of the crew being competent for the most part.
Ha! That's a nice RBG throwback.
That's nice. That's nice. Kat?
I have to say, so far I loved it. Thought it was really beautiful. It was way more than I expected, and my expectations were really low. So, yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about it.
I too went in with low expectations. It was visually stunning, which I was prepared for, but I thought the characters were interesting, and they did some really, really classic throwbacks to Star Trek, and I enjoyed it, so I liked all that.
All right, so, I mean, it sounds like generally pretty positive by everyone.
You didn't give yours, Eric.
Yeah, I know, because...
No, I wasn't planning to just yet.
What do you
Wait
mean?
a
'Cause we are-
minute.
That's not how this works. You said everybody for their first 10 minutes give a little brief song. You are a person.
It's your turn.
No,
You are
I am capable of doing it. I'm just saying that wasn't my intention or plan just yet.
Well, it should be. We're ready.
Get it done.
I'm trying to think how to encapsulate it. No, because I have all the thoughts, but I don't have them in a short take.
Did you watch both episodes? Because there are.
That's number one.
Actually,
there was a desert in one, just to be sure.
Actually, because I had to run an errand as it was literally airing live, and I don't know if you guys watched it live on, I was literally watching Antenna broadcast traditional live through the airwaves on CBS, and if you were doing it that way, then it started a bit late because of football, and then 60 Minutes, and then it went into that. And because I had an errand to run because of the delayed start, I actually was streaming CBS All Access live to my mobile device and had it on my dash, and I listened to about the first 50 minutes of the first episode live while I was driving around town. And then as soon as I got home, I seamlessly transitioned into the last 10 minutes on live broadcast. So it was an adventure.
Carl, do you see how this is not a brief summary?
I noticed. I
haven't even
begun
done
to
completely.
I just wanted to make sure everybody know that we know what's going on.
First of all, I haven't even begun to answer the initial question.
We noticed.
But we were all good sports, and pretty much we didn't want to do a brief thing either. But we were good sports, and we did a brief thing. So why can't you do it?
Well,
No. This is what you guys create. See, this is why I avoided. This is why I didn't want to do it now, because I foresaw this, and this happens all the time with soothsayers, and you know what's going to happen, and you try to steer the group in a different direction, but they insist, and you just go, "All right, fine, we'll just let this play out, and then we'll all learn."
Well, then why did you do that if you knew that this was going to happen and you didn't want to do it? Because it just felt weird to like, hey, give your brief apartment party.
I gave you guys 3 chances, but you continued, and so here we are, and that's fine. I'm cool.
3 chances for what?
Abort this course of action, but
just let him do whatever he's gonna do.
Okay, fine, whatever. I just want to point it.
Although, if you do step on the bridge and want to stun him, I'm not gonna stop you. just letting you know, you're on your own, Captain. Go ahead.
In a way, it was mostly everything I expected that it would be, and that's not saying a bad thing, except for the part that it was surprisingly close to what I expected in general, which I enjoyed, but I knew would play the way it did with fans at large. Because I was like, oh yes, this is what I thought it was going to be, and this is going to make people crazy. Different people out there, and that's exactly what happened, because so kind of everything went as expected. The only thing where I was slightly surprised was, even though I expected the show to look good, it just visually it did look even better than I thought it would, but that was the only surprise, if there was any. Everything else was as expected by me. There you go.
That was terrible.
Why?
I mean, that literally encapsulated all emotions of all humans. It was your review. I mean,
no, that's not true.
You asked us our individual opinion of the first 10 minutes, and what your response was humanity had a response to this motion picture, and it was as I anticipated. The response was very human. Discuss.
No, that's only a portion of my statement.
Dude,
I said it was everything that I expected it to be.
That is not an emotional response, Mr. Savick. If you could tell us how you felt about the episode,
I said that. Review the tape, and I said it was pretty
as it
good.
was expected is not an emotion.
Yeah, but
please, I'm trying to work with you.
But you're parsing my words.
The ones you used, yes.
No, did I not say it was pretty good?
That is, oh, jeez.
Did I not?
It was so mixed in with the history of Mesopotamia, which was thrown in. Could you please narrow it down a little? What did you think? What was your feeling?
He was taking it in stride.
No, me as
a human, yes, with emotions, right?
No, but I mean, like, excluding everything else around, like other exterior factors. It was something enjoyable that I liked watching.
There you go.
Fine.
All right.
But
crap.
But as with many things, I don't want Star Trek to be something that I singularly enjoy because
What?
No, because
oh god, yeah, please.
No, because there are
totally different from our
there are
episode.
plenty of things that I really, really like. Other things, not Star Trek.
Special
that I
sauce.
really like, and I go, oh, I really like this, and no one else does. And I don't want Star Trek to be like that. Oh, I really like this, but no one else does. You see?
So
I think so. So you're glad that you have the same response as others? Is that what you're saying? Or
No,
I think he's upset that he has the same response as others.
Okay.
No, I didn't say neither of those things. I said I liked it perfectly fine, but I didn't want that to be just that. I don't want it to only be something that I personally think is fine or enjoy, because I want it to be. I want Star Trek in particular to be something that I enjoy, but that other people at large enjoy as well in their own ways. And I don't see that that's necessarily the case. But I'm saying that's how I'd prefer Star Trek to be. Not it's like Enterprise, for instance, because I really like Enterprise and many people don't, and that's what I'm trying to avoid with this show here.
So you're concerned that because you enjoyed it, it's frightening that other people like it as well?
No.
Well, that should be a concern, because I was a little worried about that.
There are a segment of people that enjoy this show as well. We get it. I mean, you're all here present. But there are so many people who are not digging it, and that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Who don't dig it right now.
All right, well, we're going in order. We're starting.
I know, but you're putting words in my mouth that I didn't say, and I'm trying to clarify this is what I said and this is what I meant.
That's better. You are clarifying. That's helpful. Mm-hmm. Not sure why I needed that many words, though. But it's good. We're good. We're on page now. I'm happy that you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So what's your concern
I'm
about?
not sure that's what he said, but okay.
Well, I'm happy that you're in the approximation of the simulation of what most humans would call enjoy. But is your concern?
I think that's what he said.
Yes, with the trepidation that others liked it as well. But why? Okay, what is your worry about other people's reaction? What do you think
is the thousands of people who hate this show already? That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
they're morons.
But okay, so why do you think they have a beef with it? What's their problem?
Oh my gosh, the list is too long. I mean, what? Why am I answering this question? I mean, are we all not all on social media? I mean, this is all everywhere. The list is so great. I mean, where do you want to start?
Some of the main ones. What do you think is the biggest issue? What's the biggest beef with it?
For start, how does this all fit? Not the story itself, but this show has been, touted as a return to the Prime Universe, approximately 10 years prior to TOS. Does this look like Prime Universe?
Not to me.
About 10 years prior to TOS?
Not to me.
I mean, for one, why all of a sudden did the screen shrink? But we won't get into that.
And, I mean, it's everything from the aesthetic to the look to the costumes to the Klingons to the technology level to the holograms. The list goes on forever. You know what I'm saying?
Is that what people are upset about?
Now, see, they did the same exact thing aesthetically, etc., in the Abrams films, but never once did they ever claim that the Abrams films were the Prime Universe. This is something that looks like out of the Kelvin timeline, but they're saying is the Prime Universe. And really, you don't think that would make people crazy? A fairly significant percentage of Star Trek fans? And that's a big one. Is it not a big one?
Not to me.
Yeah, not
personally.
Now, look, I'm personally over... Well, I think there's more to it than that, though, but that's further down the conversation. But it doesn't personally wrangle me, but I am in no way surprised that it wrangles thousands upon thousands of people, and I don't really blame them. Those other people who feel that way, I don't really blame them for that, even though I don't feel that way the same as them. I think it's a legitimate beef if that is your beef.
What's the beef now?
That it doesn't look like it fits within the timeline of the original series.
For a million reasons, though. It's not just because the uniforms are different. It goes way further than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, I agree, but going in, I mean, we all had expectations of what this series was going to look like, or what it was going to be. I have many questions as to why they insisted on going to this particular time, doing this pseudo-prequel sandwiched in between thing. I thought that was not a great idea. But when you look at it, there is no way that this was going to work in a way that pleased folks. There was no way. There was no compromise and no structure, no artistic spin that they were going to be able to take this on short of, some kind of crazy Queen of Chaotica kind of thing, that they were going to make this look like it existed before the original series. So for people to be upset about that, so the first thing is, I don't know why they chose to go to this time period. The second thing is there's no way visually that they could have made that happen. So why are people surprised? Why are people, that's not going to work. It's like saying, what upsets me most about this version of Star Trek is that Leonard Nimoy isn't in it. There are some very basic reasons why Leonard Nimoy is not going to be in this series. You can't get upset that he's not. It's the very same thing. There are some that you cannot make this work in the way that's comfortable for all people who want to maintain all the timelines. So you got to let that go.
I understand that completely what you're saying, but it's not just a matter of you can't make everyone happy. If the definition of making everyone happy was making this somehow conform to the Prime Universe as we know it in this time period, not only did they not achieve that, it looks like they even went in the opposite direction of that goal, if that was your goal. Meaning, they almost went to lengths to enhance the disparities and continuity. So it's not a simple matter of we can't even do it. It's not only we're not going to do it, we're going to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's okay. They probably needed to do that because they needed to make a really clean break so that to make the statement that, yes, we're rebooting the look of everything, and you're going to have to accept it.
That on its own, that statement is something that I think legitimately gets fans upset, is what you just said. We're going to reboot the look of everything.
Well, see, that's why they didn't say it, though, is the problem. I mean, they couldn't come out and admit it, but they could not do it.
Now, look, as I stated, there is speculative territory we can discuss later, which may, in a convoluted way, explain the topic that we're talking about right now, but I'm just avoiding the speculative part till later. Because what I'm saying is maybe there is a reason or an explanation for everything being super off, but that gets into speculation zone.
All right. Well, let's keep with the episodes for now.
All right. But, yeah. I mean, okay, and then, again, with these changes, so what's our feeling on just the Klingons in general right now? Firstly, just their look and aesthetic and costume and makeup.
Tom?
Stiff. My only problem, I'm okay with all the rebooting stuff. I'm somebody who, tell me a good story, do good storytelling, and I don't care if you make everything look different. I'm fine with that. However, there was a stiffness, and I'm going to generalize this a little bit and say that there was a stiffness to the whole first 2 episodes that came from too much makeup on the Klingons to the point where I couldn't see their expressions and they weren't making an emotional connection with me. The captain was trying to be super formal, which is expected. And then Michael grew up on Vulcan, and so she's being a Vulcan a little bit, and so there was a general stiffness everywhere that led to the episodes feeling a little bit like pageantry, and me yeah. So that's, I wasn't a big fan of it feeling like that, but that's people. Hopefully, they can recover from that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Kat, you want to get into costumes?
I thought the Klingons were generally interesting. I don't understand why they chose to make them look so different. I don't understand why they're bald-headed. I don't understand why they are, like Tom said, kind of stiffer, less theatrical Klingons. Like, can you imagine these guys doing Shakespeare? No. I didn't mind their costume, and at the same time of me wanting them to be the old Klingons. Well, we've grown to know those Klingons from our Star Trek that we know, and we know that those guys are a bit more reasonable. They're a bit more, I feel like, civilized or something like that. And so, I think maybe the point here was to make them frightening. Is a word that I use to describe them, not really scary, because they seem really intimidating. They seem really irrational, like you can't reason with them at all whatsoever, in no shape, way, or form. And they're just going to keep pushing until they're annihilated or something happens. And I do like that type of Klingon. So I really want to see where it goes. But I don't get why we don't get the old school Klingons, but maybe, they'll let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it makes it just a bit confusing, continuity aside, because when I first saw them on screen, at first it looked like, to me, the Remans from the Star Trek Nemesis film.
Yeah.
The other Romulans, the Remans.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
looked very much like the Remans, so I was a little bit confused. But then, okay, fine, once you come to terms with these are Klingons, because of the sound of their voice, because of the way they look, because they act, the things that you guys just talked about, they almost feel like a new alien species to me in the Star Trek universe. They almost seem like a new species who is a little Klingon-like, but not actual Klingons that we've ever known before. And at first I thought, a simple explanation would be, like the Remans in the Nemesis film, oh, maybe this is like another, like a splinter group of Klingons, or, a separate, like a separate bloodline or something. But as we see in the first 2 episodes how, they're kind of uniting all 24 houses of the Klingon Empire, so I guess this is supposed to encompass the entire Klingon Empire, then I'm back to a bit confused again, because again they are so different.
They do look different. Well, one of the producers, I think executive producers early on, before the show came out, kept saying that they were going to be sexy, and I think the word was sexy, vital, and different. Yeah, and I'm thinking, who was this guy dating? Because all I can say is my fantasies about Klingon women are going to be really different this time around.
Yeah, yeah. I miss the rock hair. I miss the '80s big rock hair.
What's a weird connection? I'm looking at the Klingons on my screen right now, and sometimes in Star Trek in the past, you'd have like the non-speaking Klingons on screen, just like with the old classic Planet of the Apes movies. There was like the non-speaking apes. and they didn't have like the hero makeup, that the speaking creatures have. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times their prosthetics were really janky in Planet of the Apes or on regular Star Trek Next Generation, whatever. The background Klingons.
Yeah.
And so sometimes like their noses wouldn't be fully attached seamlessly to their faces, and etc. And I was just thinking about that right now because have you noticed the new Klingons have what looks like 4 nostrils now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a callback to those non-speaking Klingons who didn't have their nose appendage the way it was supposed to. It's almost like they're accentuating it now with the quadruple nostril. But and let's not forget too that they already deviated in the Kelvin timeline with those Klingons, which they were also different, and a lot of people said they look like cats in Into Darkness, the Klingons, but even they still felt like Star Trek, much more than these Klingons, certainly. Okay, and moving on. I mean, expanding from this. Okay, we see a lot of Federation vessels, that we've never seen before, but by and large, they look like Federation vessels, or many of them resemble Federation vessels we've seen before in other Star Trek series and films. Okay, fine, that's fine. But the Klingons, again, their ship designs are also radically different, just as their appearance is. And, again, I keep wondering how much of this stuff is very intentional. Like, for a purpose, I mean. A purpose other than looking different. Or is it simply look different? Because if it's simply look different, I don't know, it's very confusing. Why would you make that artistic decision for no reason?
Look, I'm telling you, you just got to let go of it trying to visually map.
But wait. I don't think we'd ever accept that with any other intellectual property.
Well, we should, because we've been through so much with Star Trek already. I mean, seriously, between the once you left original series into Next Generation, it was a break. Once you went from Next Generation, the Next Generation window from that to Voyager, and then into Enterprise, again, we had to deal with differences in looks and trying to figure out why this isn't like that. Then the movies, there were issues between that. We have had this constant updating of the fundamental look of it time and time again with Star Trek, to the point where it's now really you got to let it go.
But wait, what you're saying is true, except for the fact that has never been done, though, when you literally go back to a same time period that already seen or known before.
Well, it did with Enterprise, and it didn't match.
No, but that wasn't... But the time that we were seeing Enterprise was not a time we had ever really seen on screen before. This is just about a time we have seen before. Well, so with Enterprise, you had much more leeway, much more freedom to deviate, because they're not 10 years prior to Kirk and Spock.
It doesn't matter. Technology still didn't seem to match. It just, you got leeway, but it didn't.
I hear what you're saying, but it's still way off base. You're right in that there are inconsistencies in technology flow, as you're saying, but it doesn't. It even just because the technology may not make sense doesn't mean, though, that you have like literal clashes, like visual clashes with a time period already established. This is taking it to a whole different level than that.
Well, again, we've had to make these sort of adjustments in the past.
And like I said, this would never be accepted in another intellectual property. If Rogue One, the exact same story movie, looked nothing like A New Hope, there would be people with pitchforks.
If Star Wars had a history of rebooting itself inside its own timelines again and again, I think we'd be more forgiving. Star Wars has managed to maintain a consistent look throughout all of its series, and that's admirable. Star Trek is not.
I don't think Star Trek has ever stepped on its own toes in this way. Not in this way.
Yeah, Doc.
Not
Well,
in this way.
okay. Well, since it has, we got to let it go.
I mean, that's fine if we in the room agree, but that does nothing in the grand scheme of things. Us agreeing in the room.
Yeah. Well,
I still think that the rest of the hordes who are mad, I think they have legitimate.
Well, and the other thing is, you guys, you and your crew gave me such a hard time when I talked about Enterprise, and the common complaint was that most of the younger people, the young folks liked Enterprise. Why are you old guys hanging on to the past? Why are we making such a big deal about stuff not looking right? Well, I adjusted for that for Enterprise. I didn't like Enterprise for lots of other reasons, but I let that go, and I had to move on. And that was, 10 years ago? So, given the technology, given what we are able to do with special effects, given, the storytelling that we want to achieve now, you got to let it go and move on. I agree with you, but it's, the old Star Trek fans are dying. It's time for a new generation now. But
what, Eric? You know what, Carl?
Yeah?
Eric, you make a good point, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I didn't want you to go further from that point you just made. Mm-hmm. Our main complaint about Enterprise is that if it was a timeline before Next Generation or timeline before TOS, why did it have to look different? We literally got over that. And now that everybody who loves Enterprise, who says great things about Enterprise, why can't they, if they liked the J.J. Abrams universe and they took care of that, why is this so different to accept? Because we're used to accept it. We had to accept Enterprise.
No, but
we had to accept
wait.
I don't understand.
Those two, these are, you're comparing three things that are very different.
Okay, no, again, Enterprise and this is pretty much the same.
No. Again, but
even
Enterprise,
if you can't. There's no way you can say that Enterprise and this is not the same.
No, he's going to try. He's going to try. But the bottom line is, Kat, when you and I had this discussion about Enterprise, he seems to think that the look of Enterprise seems to somehow fit, or it's acceptable. I never accepted that about Enterprise. I never believed that it looked way newer, it was more modern, and the things that they did, they either seemed way too old or way too modern. It was simultaneously out of sync with what came after it for the original series. So, the Enterprise, to try to claim that Enterprise is somehow fits in the canon visually.
No, listen. No, again, Enterprise was like 100 years, and I know that sounds like it bolsters your argument of the technology being too advanced, but I'm talking about just like the look of things, the uniforms, etc. Like, we didn't know what uniforms looked like 100 years before TOS, so it didn't have to look like anything in particular. This takes place in a time we have seen already. And
which time was that? Are you talking about the Enterprise time? What time are you talking about?
I'm talking about... this is nowhere near Enterprise.
Well, I'm asking you. What time are you referring to?
This is close to...
This is 10 years before the original, right?
This is close to the Cage, the original pilot for TOS. This is a similar time frame. And so we've already seen that time frame. So this can't be the same as Enterprise, which is 100 years off, and this that exists in a time that we've already seen. And
so they can't change.
And the Kelvin timeline gets a free pass because they're not even in the same universe or dimension. So they can obviously do a
So they can't change uniforms in 10 years. That doesn't happen. That does not make sense to you.
Not only that, technically, if you look at the ships and the uniforms in the Cage, the original pilot for Star Trek, and then you look at what happened with Kirk's crew and the way the ships look then, there's actually a thematic difference between those that's, pretty noticeable. And that's in the exact same time window. But that's beside the point. None of these seem to match. You're trying to make it fit. It doesn't fit. It doesn't matter. Let it go. Move on. Let's talk about the story. Let's talk about the story.
I'd love to, but see, it's not the same as comparing Enterprise or Kelvin to Prime, because those things are farther removed. This is right there, right next to things that we've already seen. And I only started with the uniforms, but the list goes on and on and on, and it makes it totally, totally different.
Well, one thing that might be interesting is if the series continues, maybe they'll do some things that maps it into what the classic Star Trek looks like. Maybe they will. I mean, I never liked the design of the NX-01 from Enterprise. I really did not like the look and design of it. However, had the series gone on for one more season, I've seen a lot of behind-the-scenes footage. They were going to sufficiently damage the X-01, and then they were going to add the engineering section to it. And if you see the model, it really, once you snap the engineering section on the bottom of the 01, it really, really does look like one of the ships from. So, but we had to wait all that time and then still not get it. Who knows what their plans are for the future? But I'm perfectly willing to adapt.
If they had said that for whatever reason this series Discovery, if they said this took place 20 or 30 years after the events of Enterprise, suddenly you have no beef by me, because that would make a lot more logical sense to me if that were the case, but it is not the case.
We have already agreed it made no sense to start with this time. Let's move on.
All right. But this is not something. It's even for me. It's not something to easily get over.
I see.
And it hasn't ruined my enjoyment of the show itself.
Are you sure?
I don't know.
Are you sure?
Because we spent an hour on this already.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I recognize you're concerned about it. It's just I've had to learn to move on when it comes to Star Trek. And let's do it. Let's move on. All right, Tom.
Hey, Carl. What's happening, man?
What'd you think about the first two episodes?
In which order?
Well, hey, let's go. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I had a lot of opinions after watching them in the opposite order. So I had only watched the second one, and then I shut up and went back and I watched the first one. Turns out it didn't really matter that I hadn't watched the first one, because the first one was mostly just a Klingon trying to get through a sentence. So my beef isn't really with the look of things. It's with the slow intonation of the Klingons bothers me a bit. That kind of stuff. Sounds like an old guy getting a prostate exam or something.
It didn't bump me, but I noticed that as well.
Yeah, and very, very slow getting through these sentences. So. What else? Are we just talking about anything here? Or?
Yeah, whatever moved you.
Yeah, so Carl has griped a bit about being in the wrong time period and why do we have to go back in time. And I think worse than that, a lot of the storytelling was done through flashback. And again, flashback is a difficult way to get me emotionally involved with the characters. I really missed... I had just watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and just watched Wonder Woman, and kind of connected really quickly with the characters, fell in love with the characters, and liked them within 20 minutes. And I'm still having a hard time doing that with the characters in here, partly because of everything. A lot of things are told in flashback. There's a lot of time given to Klingons talking, flashbacks, and action that really should go into telling me why do I love this Michael so much, and why do I love this captain? When she gets killed, I barely felt anything because I didn't really know her yet, and I thought that was not good. That was a con for me, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another interesting experiment with these first two episodes for this series is what they've done. And I saw someone put it much clearer somewhere on Twitter or social media. I kind of had the same feeling, but they put it much more succinctly than I, which is someone out there said that these first two episodes were like the pre-credits sequence from The Emissary, the premiere of DS9, The Battle at Wolf, whatever.
359.
Yes, but the pre-credit sequence, someone basically said that these two episodes together were basically just an extended version of that from The Emissary, and that is absolutely 100% right. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it is correct that is essentially what they have done, and it's another interesting artistic choice. And how do you guys feel about that? Because this was a 2-part prelude, to be honest, for this series.
That's an interesting observation. Now that you've pointed that out, I think I like it more. Here's why. Here's why. I haven't liked the pilot of nearly any Star Trek series. I haven't liked the pilot for I cannot think of one Star Trek series that I like the pilot for.
Well, I do.
You have to like Deep Space Nine, though.
No.
What? No, because for precisely the reason that Eric is talking about. DS9 started with this big space battle, and I say big in double quotes because it was action-packed and everything, but in old Star Trek tradition, the battle scenes were maybe 2 minutes long. And then the entire rest of the pilot for DS9 was mourning and loss and sadness and patching together the remnants of lives for characters that we didn't know. It took me a while to warm up to DS9 because of that. Old Star Trek, when I say old Star Trek, I mean the 80s/90s ones, were very heavy on, the moral stories and social dilemmas, not so much so on space warfare and action, which is, classic with Star Trek. But in that era, you figured the effects were getting better. We could do more with cameras. Why couldn't we get a little bit more action? But with the pilot, I expect more. I want to see something exciting happening. We have come to an era now where, look, if you want to make your show survive, you've got to bring in the broadest possible audience. We used to have limitations on special effects and in grandeur of space battle because it was expensive, because the technology was so hard to do, coupled with the morality plays and traditional pacing of Star Trek. Action and explosions and things were they were a premium. You'd get it every 5th episode, every 3rd episode maybe, something big and exciting like that happening. To start like this, on one hand, may seem like a violation of Star Trek, but everything about this particular series is a modernization of what we have seen with Star Trek. So we got a decent scale modern space battle, but I think at the same time, they did a pretty good job of simultaneously describing some of the characters, rebooting the era that we are in. Whether you like it or not, they rebooted the era. They introduced us to characters. They gave us a space battle, and they were able to somehow give us touchstones in feels from the original Star Treks prior and balled all of that up in 2 episodes as the pilot. It's really one of the first pilots, if you count them together, that I actually enjoyed. The others, I was sort of like, well, they're building, or I know something is going to come after this. I felt that also in this episode because I truly believe that now the adventure is going to begin with Discovery. So I get it. I get that sensation of the prelude that you're talking about. But also, shockingly, surprisingly, they were able to give us so much more in these first 2 episodes that I think was enjoyable.
I tend to agree with you with Star Trek of old. Yes, a lot of the pilot or premiere episodes are not the best examples of the show. However, I just wanted to say, I always thought that The Cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before are pretty good as pilots go. I just wanted to add that in. I don't know how you feel about those, Carl.
I like them, but they're
not the quintessential TOS per se.
That's the thing.
But I'll give you that. But they're not as off and maligned with the tone as those others that you mentioned.
Well, that's because of the era that it was from. The thing about The Cage and No Man Has Gone Before is they felt like Forbidden Planet and Twilight Zone episodes.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that is revolutionary for the time, and it is beautiful for the time. And there's something very much about the 50s and 60s that you could feel in those episodes. But the instant that we finally got in there with Kirk and Spock and with the original series had a different feel than those pilot episodes.
I agree 100% with what you're saying right now. I just feel that it was a good start, even if it wasn't, the fully formed version of the show that we're all familiar with now. Yeah. Whereas the other ones I felt were much more subpar, attached to their respective shows. The ones from the 80s and the 90s.
Encounter at Farpoint. Come on, people.
Yeah, I know.
I almost walked away after that. I still can't go back and watch. I really can't watch Encounter at Farpoint. It's just no.
But anyway, because again, I brought that all up because, of course, this show is called Star Trek Discovery, and we have yet to see the Discovery. But
maybe it's a metaphor. It's a rediscovery of the Klingons.
Right, but I never liked. Wow. I never liked that Star Trek Voyager was called Star Trek Voyager, and the ship was called Voyager, and
it's on a voyage.
Well,
dude,
it always felt too on the nose for me, and that's sort of how I felt about the name Star Trek Discovery from the start. It's a bit on the nose.
That's all right.
But
so was DS9. It was in deep space. It was on Deep Space Nine.
And for the humans and the Federation.
Yeah, but come think of it, you like Enterprise. What are you talking about, man?
What about it? What of it?
It's named after the ship, and it's the new Enterprise.
I didn't really like that either.
Dude, just the naming. That's just three-quarters of the Star Treks you've talked about here.
No, just the naming. I like the show, but I didn't like that. Yes, that its name was Enterprise, and
at least it's canon. All right.
But okay, now as far as the human characters, at least the ones we get to know in the first 2 episodes. To be honest, none of them, even the captain, none of them were really memorable for me, aside from, of course, our lead, number 1. But, there is one other besides her. I kind of do like the Craven science officer.
Yes, Saru.
I actually do like him. It's not that I like him personally, but I like the character's traits and how that could fit into this type of series. And he seems like a very useful character for future stories to tell.
This is the skinny alien on the bridge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he's on an exploratory vessel called Discovery, but he doesn't like to explore or discover anything.
And he's a scientist.
Yeah, he's interesting. that seemed a little weird to me, but I kind of liked him because he had the exact outlook I would have, which is let's not poke anything. How much food do we have? Let's just float around and eat stuff.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, he's not exactly the same, but he reminds me of characters like Marvin, the depressed robot from Hitchhikers.
Sure.
And I like that type of character being around. So it kind of grounds, the rest of the characters, in whatever situation they find themselves in. So I think, and also, again, you don't really get too many. I haven't given it deep thought. You don't really get such pessimistic characters in the previous Star Trek shows, aside from like side characters, like you could say like Quark or someone on DS9, but he's not a Federation, type of character. But if you limit yourself to Federation types in the previous series, I don't know that there's been someone this... Well, this wasn't in the series. I just remembered. Remember that guy in Star Trek The Motion Picture on the bridge? And then when they announce that Captain Spock is going to be joining the crew, and there's that one weird alien crewman on the bridge with the weird eyes, and he's like has a fro, but he's starting to bald, and he's like orange yellow eyes, and he's like... Well, Captain Decker was with the ship through the whole refit, You remember him?
Very briefly.
You remember?
Yes.
Because everyone's like, but this is Spock. And he's like, well, and he's this weird downer character. That's like his only line in the movie. This guy kind of reminds me, because I would watch the motion picture a lot when I was young, and I was like, who is this guy? Who is this guy on the bridge? This just like raining on everyone's parade. But that's all you ever get of him.
That's funny. I barely remember that guy. I just, yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about who the captain was, who Michael, the first officer, was, and then who this guy as a science officer was, they do have an interesting combination because Michael has the genuine heart of the explorer and throws herself in a space probe. The captain had the staid wisdom of experience and, and balanced caution. And then you had the science officer who had all the information and the knowledge, but also the common sense and the wariness. So that trilogy is a good combination.
I want to have an addendum to my previous statement because before I just realized I'll get a deluge of tweets and messages. Okay, yes, Bones, I forget. He was the sardonic one. Okay, before everyone calls me out on that. Yes,
okay. No,
Bones
true.
was that. And yes, taking that into account, this character is interesting in being that Bones. See, you reminded me of that when you were talking about the triumvirate. And I was thinking, this is a very odd triumvirate, the three you just spoke of. But he's an interesting twist on the Bones role, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, there you go.
I thought the characters were pretty good.
No, they're forgettable. The other ones.
Okay, well, hang on. I'm agreeing with you on one part, which is the first two episodes really were only about those three, though. I mean, the reason we learned so much about the captain is because of this triumvirate balance. We learned about Michael and we learned about Saru from the captain and from the three of their interplay. That's, other than the crazy amount of exposition that occurred in particularly the first episode, where they spelled out everything that was going on verbally. Besides that, the other way that they could quickly introduce us to these characters is by looking at how those three interacted. So, despite the fact that we lost the captain in the second episode, her presence there was supposed to be teaching us not just about Michael but about Saru too. So, but yeah, no, we didn't learn about anybody else really. There was a little bit of funny banter or whatnot, and some side looks that were interesting. But this was about introducing Michael through the other characters, and we can only assume that we're going to learn more about everyone else as the series goes on.
Kat, any thoughts on the characters? I don't think I've heard you say too much at all, if anything, on this particular topic.
I usually, when I watch some of the new sci-fi shows, I think that they have a casting issue where the characters aren't memorable and the cast is just not something that catches my attention, and they feel dry and bland. I noticed this first in Enterprise and Stargate Universe, where the characters were they seemed like a whole cast of extras of the week that you would see on other sci-fi shows, and they brought them together to be prime characters, and it didn't work. Star Trek Discovery did not feel that way to me. I expected it to. I think, going in, I have to say that I stayed away from the internet. I didn't watch the trailers. I didn't really get any information, read anybody's opinions on Star Trek Discovery. So I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that Sonequa, is that her name?
I think
Green
so,
Martin,
yes.
Was in it, but I had no idea that she would be the star of the show. I just want to say, I
think we had mentioned it on an episode of RBG. I don't know if you were present, but weeks and months ago. But go on. Right.
I don't remember that. And I didn't, because it just did not make sense to me. I didn't think that anybody would make a air quote black character a main character on a TV show like this, primetime TV show.
Well, wait.
Number one, can I finish my sentence?
Okay.
Can I finish?
Okay.
Let me finish. Thank you. I didn't think anybody would do that. Number two, this was around the time that I heard something about Angela Bassett being on it. And so, I heard so many things that I just forgot a whole bunch. And so, when I actually saw the final thing come together, I was pleasantly surprised to see her there. I didn't think Michelle Yeoh, I saw her that she was going to be a part of it. I didn't think I'd like her at all because I didn't understand their decision in choosing her. And so, but when I saw her and her interaction with Michael. I really, really enjoyed her as a captain, and I was very sad that we only got her in the first 2 episodes because I think that she would have been a great ongoing captain. The other characters, like we said, was Soros, and maybe some of the other crew members. I think that they were supposed to be forgettable because they all were going to die. So I don't really have a problem with that. I think we got to know who we needed to know, and I didn't feel like. I guess maybe you, Eric, and Tom, where I didn't connect with the characters. And I think maybe there was a little girl power there, whatever. I'm guilty.
Wait, did I say that?
No, I'm not sure.
I did.
Well, Tom did. I don't know if you said it, Eric. Yeah. I'm sorry. I felt that it just was really cool to see those characters. Not even because they were women in power or whatever. I mean, we've seen that dozens of times, Janeway, the list goes on, but it was just really cool because it was unexpected to me because I kind of closed my mind to all information on this show and wanted to be kind of fresh when I went in, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. And so I like the characters.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, a lot of those things, the broad strokes of things that you just mentioned that were new to you, yeah, for sure, I knew those things because of things I've read, etc. So, of course, how could I be surprised by some of those? Like, I already kind of knew the role that Michelle Yeoh would play in number 1, etc. But that's fine. I mean, that didn't really affect my like or dislike of the show. But the one thing I did like, but it's kind of a way to score cheap points with me, I mean, like, a way to score cheap points, which is about number 1's character. You see, I do like, especially in the context of Star Trek or Federation in general, I do like when someone really, really goes against the grain. I mean, the Federation grain of rules, because it's always bothered me personally, just throughout Trek at large, for the most part, all the sticking to Federation rules here, and of course, it was kind of like one of the best traits of Kirk is the times when he would selectively break the rules. But this is not like that. This is not selectively. She has very little regard at all. When it gets in the way of...
are you talking about Michael?
Yes, Michael.
Uh-huh.
Yes, like, she really doesn't care. Once she thinks she knows the best course of action or whatever it is, she has no... she does not flinch at all when it comes to...
So, you know what, Eric? That surprises me. You being in the military that you would enjoy... Well, maybe I guess it's because you were in the military that you enjoy someone in the military breaking the rules. Is that what we're hearing? Or what are we hearing?
Well, yeah. Absolutely.
Because I feel like you, in the course of duty, would not do that because you know.
No. See, I'm more of the Kirk approach, which is, we talk about real life. No, I rip my shirt, at least once a week.
Oh, okay. There you go.
No, not that. I may have done that, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
No, what I mean is more like Kirk in the sense that, by and large, I think the rules that we all play by in the service are necessary and need to be followed, blah, blah, blah. But when they get so etched in stone that it's like, no matter what, you have to do this. And I'd always be Mr. Hypothetical, but wait a second. If this happens, surely we would, abandon that rule, because surely that would not be the, no. Anytime. See, I never liked when everything was very black or white. Like, you do this or you don't do this. I always liked, how about we do that, but let's have some caveats. You know what I mean? Like,
so you never wanted to abandon your own ethics in the face of the structure.
That's a prettier way of saying what I want to say. But see, Michael takes that a step further because she's not just that selective. She's just like, she has no compunction.
See, I didn't get that. I didn't get that
much further than I'd ever take it.
I didn't get that feeling as much as you did that she was a loose cannon. I got the feeling that she
really?
I got the feeling that she was forced to choose between saving her ship and her crew, and she thought that she was doing that.
No, she absolutely did that.
And saving Starfleet because she knew that the Klingons were about to do something and that you had to hit first.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
she had worked out the logic, and she firmly believed that, and she was probably right in the context of the
But can you even ever describe her as a loose cannon with all of her Vulcan training? I mean,
absolutely, yes.
I don't know. I think what she did
character
is maybe some emotional logic. I don't think that she ever lost her cool in any of that. All of that was calculated. Loose cannon to me just means like a crazy person with no thought involved at all.
I am not saying that. I'm not taking it that far.
Clarify our loose cannon.
No, she is a loose cannon, but not reckless abandon. There is reckless abandon, but not completely reckless abandon. I mean, she has logic behind her. She has thought about it. You know what I mean? So she's not just reacting on emotion. She's thought about it. She's done like the logic. So she knows what she thinks is right, and she's probably right. But the loose cannon part is breaking the rules like no one ever has that we've seen in the Federation. Because, yeah, as was mentioned, Kirk broke the rules many times. Even Spock did here and there. But they were both much more discreet about it, especially Spock. This is
not Kirk. Not Kirk.
No, you're right. Kirk less so. Kirk less so. But this is taking it to a whole nother level.
I think Kirk would have totally done this. In fact, in the Star Trek 2009, I'm pretty sure he did something like this, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, it is similar. It is similar to what happened in Star Trek 2009. Again, it's one of the... I saw many similarities between this two-parter and Star Trek 2009.
I agree with you.
I hadn't actually thought about this particular one, but this is very much what happens in Star Trek 2009. For sure.
I think because of its similarity to 2000.
But the difference is, though, in that Kirk was fresh out of the academy, super young, much more brash. It's weird coming from a 7-year crew member and first officer, which is a very different position than what Kirk was.
Well, the only thing I have about that is that they thought Klingons were fabled or something like that. They hadn't heard from him in a very long time.
100 years.
This is a very, very different situation. This is something that Starfleet hadn't encountered in a long time. So,
which was weird, too, because that reminded me of the pilot for Enterprise, which had the same thing going, which was we hadn't seen Klingons in so long. Why would they be messing with us now? Which I thought was a bit weird, too. But.
And blowing up a corn silo, which was really thrilling start.
Would you say?
Thrilling start for Zadie. I told you, I haven't liked one pilot for Star Trek.
Carl.
Just reminding you.
Just
why I said it.
Just freaking why.
It was rough.
Well, I really want to like Michael. I really do. I hope that we learn more about her, and she becomes more real and warmer. I feel like I have information on her. I don't feel like I know her. I don't feel.
Well, here's the other thing too. I don't want to think about this, but these thoughts are creeping into my mind during the discussion. Because I was gonna say, if you've seen the Next Time trailer,
I have
for episode 3. Of Discovery.
Is that where you kill an episode?
I mean, from little bits that we see in that trailer, it reminds me of Jyn Erso from Rogue One. And the reason I don't like that, I love that movie, but I mean, it just again makes it seem samey. It's like, oh, okay, so she's a Jyn Erso type a little bit. This Michael, which. I don't want to think about her in that type of way, meaning comparing to, who's like this. Or she's like Kirk in 2009. She's like Jyn Erso in Rogue One.
Well, it's hard to do anything new these days with all the sci-fi we've got behind us at this point, I think.
Apparently it is difficult, except for when you see that somebody pulls it off in something else. But I don't want to touch the thought yet, and this is just a glimpse from a trailer. I didn't freeze frame it or anything like that. And I don't know, but I like her so far. I don't know. Are there any other specific things we want to say about the episodes right now?
I like that the Vulcans are Vulcan again. For a while, we were getting Vulcans that were emotional.
Which ones were the emotional?
I think in Enterprise.
Oh yeah, well that was a part of the thing in Enterprise. For sure.
It's miserable.
Yes, and what else? Or just Enterprise?
Oh, I can't remember. I just remember being disappointed that Vulcans are always they're always seething with emotion when they're supposed to be.
See, it seems because Kat said something about Michael's logic earlier, and I was going to say at that time, you see, it seems to me that by design, her being like the ward of Sarek, she's like the Uber Spock in the sense that Spock was, the half human, half Vulcan, struggling with his identity and, wanting to be full Vulcan, but those, like, the human parts of him, expressing themselves here and there and blah, 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 blah. We get it. But Michael is like Spock in that way, except taking it much further. Because obviously she's full human, first of all. But then second, she's like an offspring of Sarek and brought up in the Vulcan way, but even more human than Kirk. So that's why Spock. So that's why I'm thinking of her as like the Uber Spock character. She's the even more. She's like the Belana Torres of Vulcans.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Just saying. Just saying.
Well, they sure blame her for everything, don't they?
Yeah, they were
everything.
Michael?
No, Michael in these two episodes. It just seemed like everything was her fault. I mean, to sentence her to life in prison, and she was pretty much right at every step of the way.
Yes.
She was just following what you do. And every time.
See, what's ironic about it? What happens with Michael in these episodes is she kind of takes that proverb of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. That's essentially what guided Michael through her actions in these first two episodes. Ironically, that she was putting everyone else's interests above her own singular interests. It just didn't, happen to work out the right way. But also going back to what I was saying about I like the rebellious streak she has. I may have tweeted this when I was watching it, but I actually enjoyed what's the name of the ship? The Shenzhou. I actually enjoyed them getting wrecked and for the most part perishing, because I liked that. Even though it's sad, I liked that it vindicated Michael in a roundabout way. Because I was rooting for her character, and that's I tweeted something to the effect of like, I was glad for once the Federation, or not for once, but it's happened before. But I like when the Federation gets bit in the butt by its own way of doing things. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know because I am one of those people, going back to existing Trek, that never is partly by design. I never liked the Federation being so seemingly perfect.
I just thought it was weird to me that higher up, when the captain was having the holographic conversation with that higher up at Starfleet, just as the war was breaking out, Michael walks in the room, and that dude is like thanks a lot for starting a war. To Michael, he's just totally like everybody's blaming her for everything, and
in that respect,
hey, somebody ate all the sheet cake in the lounge.
It was Michael.
Her parents were killed by Klingons, and now she just steals cake all the time.
And blames the Klingons for it.
In that regard, though, the Admiral was pure Star Trek, where the Admiral is always a douche. No matter what iteration, even Kelvin timeline, the Admiral is always a douche. And so
but she in no way started that war. She visited a probe. She defended herself. She warned everybody that the Klingons were about to attack. They did. She tried to get, she tried to save her captain in the ship by acting early, and she felt she had to mutiny to do so. And sure, you could throw her in prison for that, but life in prison for.
You know what, Tom? It sounds like you actually like Michael.
I do.
A lot.
I want to like her.
It sounds like you really into her.
Oh, and that Admiral, by the way,
I think you do.
the admiral that we're speaking of. Do you know who I thought the actor was as I was watching the episode the first time?
This is going to be great.
I thought it was Anthony Michael Hall.
Shut
up.
up.
Me too. Me too. I did the exact same
And I was
thing.
like, I thought, this is so cool. Like, I like that he has this bit role. And then I went to go look it up, and it's not him.
That was good because he looked just like.
Well, at first I thought it was like the Flash's dad or the dad from Dawson's Creek, but I was like, no, it's not him. And so then I thought it was, and I was convinced it was Anthony Michael Hall, but it wasn't. He just looks.
It should have been.
Yeah, it should have been. I like that type of casting. Like it's not even, it's like a cameo, but yeah. Like,
Terry Serpico, that guy's name is.
Yeah, he's been in some known series, other series, for sure. But oh well. But all right. But I mean, even if I'm assuming we're done talking about the episode, but there's still plenty more to talk about Discovery and.
Why are we done talking about it? There's so much more to cover.
Well, that's what I just said. I said, I feel like there's a lot more to cover outside of the episode.
Okay, well, one other little thing I just wanted to point out. I was surprised that they were able, despite the fact that the look does not seem to fit in with the timeline. Never mind that. I still was very surprised at how many genuinely Star Trek touchstones they sprinkled throughout the first two episodes. I mean, and they weren't heavy-handed. They fit within the story, and they fit within the context of what was going on the screen. It was really surprisingly well done. I mean, everything from the sonar chirps on the bridge, the captain leaning in with "We have engaged the Klingon. We have engaged the Borg. It was just one thing after the other that really just sort of made it really feel like Star Trek. And when they tried to do that with Enterprise,
oh boy.
They never got the balance right, because it was always like, we're going to go into the room now and begin to fire our photonic lasers. Wink, wink. Just call it a phaser. We all know it's a phaser.
They hadn't invented phasers yet.
It's not the point.
Oh God, can we not with the Enterprise talk?
The point is that it wasn't heavy-handed, and it wasn't corny, and it wasn't awkward. It really was just one thing after another. Really seemed to feel like Star Trek from all of the different eras. One other interesting thing is, of course, Vulcans or Vulcan-like folks hurtling themselves toward probes in spacesuits. I mean, that's original series all day. I mean, excuse me, the motion picture.
Yes, of course.
Just that scene with the screen projected on the glass and the flying through space.
Of course.
I mean, even as blatant heavy-handed reference as that was, it was still enjoyable. Her having fun flying out that way, and of course the new modern effects that they could put on that, it made it such a powerful scene. So I'm just saying the actual Star Trek touchstones sprinkled throughout these two episodes. Really, despite the fact that it was, all super modern and JJ blazed out and whatever, it really still felt like Star Trek to me. And I was surprised by that. Because it looked so different, because I wasn't connected to the characters yet, I didn't know if they were going to be able to do that. They did a great job with that. So I really liked it.
Well, I loosely agree with what Carl just said in total. Overwhelmingly on social media, I've heard people say the exact opposite of what Carl just said. That they only felt there was just a few tiny things that reminded them of Star Trek, but that by and large it was nothing like Star Trek at all.
I don't.
My thing is, Eric, is why do you give a damn about what these people are saying? Because
I have plenty of good reasons.
You're curating a whole bunch of
plenty of reasons.
I know, but you're curating a whole bunch of people who we don't know. We don't know their backgrounds. We don't know anything about these unnamed people.
I can answer this question easily. I can answer these questions
because they're just the collective Twitter.
The reason I care about this stuff is because it affects the longevity and the strength of Star Trek, the franchise as a whole, because this is exactly what has been happening and been going on already, that we've already been going through in the real world with the Kelvin timeline, and that has very much exacerbated things behind the scenes in Star Trek world, meaning Paramount, Viacom, and that is a very exacerbated situation already. Because, look, I enjoyed the Kelvin timeline for the most. Two of the films I really love, and one is and I really enjoyed those movies and those actors playing those roles in that alternate timeline. But despite how much I enjoyed it, it has not worked well, or as well as it should have, for the franchise, for the intellectual property. And there's reasons why it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. And this series, whether I like it or not, is doubling down on those same things that have already kind of weakened the intellectual property from a financial point of view. So that concerns me. It concerns me when Star Trek as an IP has like issues under the skin that can cripple it. I mean, call me crazy, but that worries me.
Well,
this is something that has already been happening before Discovery came out, and Discovery could very well exacerbate the entire situation and just make things even worse. And I don't want Star Trek to struggle. I want it to keep going. We may never see another Kelvin timeline film. I'm not happy about that at all. But that's kind of the way things look right now because of things behind the scenes.
All right. Well, I mean, I agree with your concerns. I recognize that, in my opinion of what we've seen so far, the greatest concerns that I had when I think about Enterprise, when I think about a lot of the issues that have happened with the modern versions of Star Trek, is that the deviations from the expectations of the fans were more fundamental to the story than the look of it, or even the time of it. I know, and I've heard the complaints and the issues about those things, but I'm kind of like with Tom, where if you can tell me a good story, I can forgive a lot, or I'm still excited to hear. One of the things, and that I brought up early about Discovery is, despite the fact that it seemed out of time, despite that, there still seemed to be good storytelling and a connection, a connection with the original spirit of Star Trek. There was a genuine sense of wonder that I felt watching this episode. And I mean, from the start, my arms were crossed and I was sitting back like, okay. I was not hopeful for what I was going to see. But there was a getting back to what made Star Trek fun. Going out on missions. There's an unexplained phenomena. There's a probe we're going to poke around with. Here come the Klingons. Even though it didn't look like what I classically expect, the feeling seemed to be there. And that has not been the case with a lot of the Abrams movies. That was not the case with Enterprise. So they managed to, while the look is different and the timeline issues are, whatnot, for the first time in a long time, the feel of it was right. And that was surprising. And that is giving me hope. So yes, I agree with your external concerns about the fans' reactions to that and all that kind of stuff. But surprisingly, at its core, this felt more like Star Trek than a lot of the new versions have.
I think I find it interesting what you just said, though, just in that. I mean, because it's funny to me that this rings very true for you in particular. Because this rings true enough for me, but then also so did Enterprise and so did Abrams. So, I mean, they're all kind of okay for me. No. But what I find interesting, though, is that you say this more so feels more like Star Trek to you. Because to me, and this doesn't bother me, but to me, this feels so much more like the Kelvin timeline than anything else.
Doesn't matter. This is not.
No. But I'm saying it's weird because that's what this feels most connected to me. But see, that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bump me. That's not a negative. It just, I don't see how that fits into what you just said.
I can be clear about that because the Kelvin timeline is a look. The Kelvin timeline is like the costume. The Kelvin timeline is not the story. It's not the feel. Because I get
that. I hear that. I get what that means. But to me, saying that to me, the Kelvin timeline is like the TOS movies, and then this series is more like the series that we're used to on television. But because the TOS films or Next Generation films could be really good or enjoyable, but they didn't necessarily play by the conventions that we're used to in the episodic Star Trek. They were like these larger-than-life adventures. Not always, but some of the good ones were. See what I'm saying? And to me, the Kelvin ones were kind of like that. No, they were not like episodic TV Trek. They were these adventure movies more than that. And yes, you're right. This is more like the television Star Trek. I get it, but it still feels very rooted in Kelvin, even if it is.
All right, now let me try again.
But are you saying that if it's rooted in Kelvin, and because it's rooted in Kelvin, it is not Star Trek? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't. No,
because I don't understand why you making the difference.
Well, because to me, Kelvin is much more in line in Star Trek in general than what Carl feels. So for me, there's not an issue, but it doesn't make sense.
I don't think that's what Carl said. Is that what we?
No, but he was saying that this is more true to Star Trek we know, and Kelvin is not. Enterprise is not.
I think he said that. I think his main point was Enterprise was not.
Well, he mentioned Enterprise as well.
Look, you could just ask me. Can I finish, people? I will tell you.
Carl meant.
Carl
I'm trying to know what Carl heard with what you said. So I heard one thing from what you said.
Can I finish? I'm going to tell you what I meant, people. This is it. It's very simple.
Damn it,
I tell you, just keep arguing with me. Well, what I'm trying to say. Listen to me. All right. So we've had this ongoing discussion, Eric, but it's not that it is the Kelvin universe, because my beef is I only thought the first of the Kelvin universe movie episodes was true Star Trek. The second two are not to me.
Wow.
We've had,
I understand the second, but the third as well?
No, third was better than the second.
No,
but no,
I think you just didn't enjoy the third, but it was definitely Star Trek.
It was better.
Didn't enjoy it, and I personally enjoyed the second one as well. I think all of them were fine.
It was
just because
better.
you didn't enjoy it, don't say that doesn't mean it's not Star Trek.
Listen, I can defend my point, but we've already made.
You can't defend it because
yes, we've already had this discussion. You and I, Kat, we had it on another podcast. But the point is I agree third was better. But the bottom line is, I still believe that the original movie of the Abrams universe was surprisingly good and surprisingly Star Trek. The second one definitely ran off the rails and just bastardized anything that was great about original series. The third one brought it back a little bit, but certainly not on par with the first movie. And it's still, when you look at what the original series was about, what Next Generation was about, there was a stronger theme of the spirit of exploration. Yes, Eric, I get what you're saying, that the movies were more theatrical and there was a lot more action going on, but still, think about Insurrection. Clearly it was based more on the storytelling style of original series, and
that's actually why I knocked that movie. By the way,
I know, but that's
right.
but I'm just trying to connect
right now.
I'm just trying to talk about how the movies can have a consistent feel of Star Trek, but be of different eras and be of different scales, but still have a spirit that still felt like the original Star Trek ideal. So that's all I'm saying. So no, just because it's the Abrams universe doesn't mean that it is all alike to me. That's why I started this whole conversation saying the Abrams universe is like a costume. It is the clothing, but it is not the story. There is a difference among even the Abrams stories. Some felt more like Star Trek than others did. So it's not about the fact that it's the Abrams universe. Just saying, for the first time in a long time, they have recovered a lot of the genuine wonder and exploration, and we're going out here not really knowing what's going on. Let's see what's out there spirit of what Star Trek was supposed to be about. That's all. it was good to see it again.
How does everybody feel about the Dutch camera angle?
I was going to bring that up, and I had forgotten. How does everyone feel about it?
I don't know what a Dutch camera angle is.
It's where
everything's askew.
They roll the camera just a little bit in lots of the scenes, and it's kind of a continuation of the recent movies, because they did that a lot in the movies. And this is the first time I've really seen it over and over again in one of the TV series. And I find it's a little it's cool, but you have to earn it. I think you have to earn that kind of cool. You can't just do it in every shot. So I hope they tone that down a tiny bit.
I like it, but asterisk. When BSG 2003 came on board, it kicked off a trend. It introduced the shaky cam, and I liked it a lot because it's something we hadn't really seen in television and sci-fi at the time, and it was fine. But it started a trend which carried over into many other series and drama, not just sci-fi, dramas, action shows, movies, Born Identity, what was it? Quantum of Solace with James Bond. It went wild, the shaky cam. And it was something that we all had to get through. Like, it took nearly a decade of where they were overusing the technique, and then it finally went away. And I just hope that doesn't become a thing. They're bringing the Dutch angle, and I like it, but I don't want them to go crazy in this series, and I don't want everyone else to go crazy with it either, because I'm going to start getting angry.
You know what that means, Eric? They're going to go crazy with it. There was lens flare. I know what that is.
Yeah, there was lens flare, but see, of course, the expected reaction was everyone said, "Oh, thanks a lot, Abrams," and no, this was not that. Yes, the lens flare has been over the top in some of the Abrams movies and some of his other Abrams non-Star Trek movies. I get it. But this was not... Just because you see a lens flare doesn't mean you have to be like a Pavlovian dog and just freak out, because it wasn't...
I didn't care about the lens flare.
I didn't care either. In this instance, no cares. And there was like a little bit of it in Beyond, but again, it wasn't over the top and constant. So yeah, I wasn't worried about that.
You know what the real question is are we glad that there's a colon back in Star Trek? That's the real question.
Because if there's a colon in the title,
this stuff.
If there's a colon, it's got to be good. That's just the way it goes.
I have no thoughts on. I have no thoughts on the colon. No.
Battle Los Angeles. You see, that's much better than the Battle of Los Angeles. The very different quality sci-fi movies.
It means a lot. I think that right there is the thread that keeps
the began the colon. Yes, it's true. Yeah. I don't mind the Dutch camera angle so much because technically, while I hate the shaky cam, the Dutch camera angles and the rolls are more reminiscent of Farscape, and that was something that I did not mind so much, and I think it adds it adds a certain degree of action that you can still see. See, that was my beef with the shaky cam. The shaky cam, you couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah, that was just confusing.
And it was confusing. With the Dutch cam, you get the weird, Hitchcockian nausea, but at least you can still see what's happening.
Yeah.
That's the difference that I see.
I like it, but I would be surprised if it remains as prevalent throughout the series run. I mean, because that's just the way things are in most shows, and like they get really crafty in their pilots and kind of, they mellow out once they get into the regular workflow from a production point of view.
And I am assuming it is because this was an action-packed beginning. I mean, there were plenty of scenes there. There was not a lot of Dutch angles going on that were the more quiet ones. It was only when there was running on the bridge or running from something that there was, or a ship's been hit, that you got all the action happening on the screen.
Look, and it's very proud. Even during some still scenes or slow close-ups, there's a lot of it. But I'm fine with it right now.
A lot of the conversations on the bridge were.
And before we try to give some type of rating to this opening two-parter, I'm just calling it a two-parter.
Wait. I still have one more question for Tom.
Go ahead.
So, Tom, now that you've seen both parts, I never really got a whole view of, you know how when you only saw, like, you thought you saw the whole thing, but it was only half, and you went back and you watched the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Now, did the questions you have or the complaints you have, did those go away? Or how did that work?
Not really. What?
Again, that's crazy.
Yeah, I thought he was going to say that.
No, the first episode was just the Klingons talking for quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
So there wasn't a lot. I did enjoy the desert. Now I know that scene, and I enjoyed the big flea. The big flea-like aliens in the desert were very cool. And cinematically, it's really, really beautiful. The whole show's really beautiful, but mostly. Yeah, mostly I don't see any mistakes. Are we giving our final summaries now?
Well, we still have plenty more discussion, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they haven't made any mistakes that they can't recover from. When I first fired it up, I was so afraid of being disappointed when I was first watching it that I'd kind of start it and then stop it. And breathe a little bit, and then start it again. Just waiting for some. If I hear a Southern accent, I'm walking away. And I was. Then I started watching longer and longer periods, and then eventually I dug in and kind of enjoyed it. What's up with
your Southern accent? Your dislike for your Southern accent?
I'm assuming that's an Enterprise reference.
Yeah, that's Trip. I don't want anybody spitting tobacco on the ship. That's all. It just doesn't work for me.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But, so I'd probably give it a 65 to 70% at the moment. I'd like to connect with all the characters more, as I said, and I hope we get a chance to do that. I hope that I get to the point where I really like her, and I really like and know her, and that I'm rooting for her, and that this universe, and the way it looks that they've created is someplace that I really want to escape to, because that
65 or 70%, Tom, that's a D or an F.
No. Hey, D. That's okay.
It's really strong on Rotten Tomatoes if you have.
Yeah.
I mean, that score.
Carl and I got through college.
You weren't supposed to tell, Tom. We were straight A's the whole time.
Okay, sorry, Tom. I just had to.
But before we rate, though, and we still have plenty to talk about.
Tom wasn't finished. I interrupted him.
No, that's okay. I didn't know whether we were done or not. So go ahead, Eric.
No, I just wanted, before we give some type of rating and continue the conversation, I just want to know what people think about the opening title sequence, and in addition to that, the opening score and the score in general, if you noticed it throughout the show.
Carl
hit it.
I already know what Eric is going to say about the opening theme. I can feel it because I know how I feel about the opening theme.
Okay, I don't know the answer to either of those.
All right, I'll go.
Go ahead, Tom.
Opening theme. It doesn't have a hook in it that brings me into that universe when I think of it. So when you think back to all of the Star Treks from the 90s, when you hum the DS9 theme, you're right back in there. Your brain is right back in there at Quarks and everything. And I didn't hear a theme in this that is going to take me there, that is going to take me into that universe. So that was a big problem. The cues and themes during the show are fine.
Yes.
And I'm glad that there's a lot of that it's mostly orchestral stuff, which is much more timeless. And so I'm very happy with that. Just wish that the theme was a little more prominent and hooked me in. And I got to say that having watched the Orville, that the theme at the beginning of the Orville is trying a little harder to do that.
Yep. That's it exactly.
That's another conversation. I mean, even just talking about the score, that's another conversation.
So can I say that I actually like the theme? I do agree with Tom that it might be hummable at some point, but it's not like a catchy tune. But I was relieved to see it in that it was not the opening like Enterprise.
Stop.
I was just absolutely. I think it just was really high, and I liked it so much because it was not like Enterprise. I like the what do you call it? The draftsmanship or whatever that was going on in the titles or whatever. That was great. And I liked when they did it in Enterprise, but that singing and that song and the jangly jang, whatever was going on in that, it was disgusting and it made me want to barf every time. And it ignited fury. It was not furious here. It was not furious. I might have been, in fact, I thought it was hummable until Carl pointed out that it was not. So I was fine with it.
It's missing a hook is the problem. But
that's fine.
Because,
but I don't care as long as it's.
Why she hates that? I like the original opening.
You're
of
lying,
Enterprise.
Carl.
I told you I did.
You are
That's
lying.
the only thing that I liked about Enterprise was the original non-easy listening version of the Enterprise theme. I did. I
don't like it.
I don't like the remake of it with the guitar they threw in. But the original, I couldn't believe because it was a complete break. It was a complete break from everything that Star Trek had done before. But the thing is I get what they were doing. I get it. I know. You want to know what it was? You want to know why?
What? Explain it to me.
It was a gospel song.
I am gonna hang up right now.
I'm serious. I am so serious. That's because all Star Trek themes have been aspirational and big, and we're going beyond and we're going higher and whatnot. It actually was. They in their own way. They were gospel songs, but, of course, the science and exploration. And this was the first time they pursued the same spirit of that, but actually used a gospel song. That's what they were doing. That's what it was.
Yeah, I felt like that was all coming on the heels of the theme to Armageddon at the time.
Not helpful. Yeah, that's true.
That's what they were doing, and that's not a timeless thing. That's just in that point in time. And I understood what they were trying to do, but it just sounded like it made me want to,
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, it was like when you're making out with your trailer trash girlfriend in the back of a pickup.
That's not that bad. It wasn't that bad.
It was that bad.
It's not that bad because
I think it's a good thing you're describing.
Because the Aerosmith was hard 90s. And
that was awesome. That was so awesome.
That was not timeless.
It was not timeless, but it was awesome.
But the original Enterprise theme was sort of classic 70s gospel is what it was. That's what they were doing.
Yeah, I agree. But okay.
So saying all of that, we know that Eric liked it. I'm curious to hear why.
I like it, but I'm not over the moon with it. The theme was fine. What works with it for me is the composer they got, and I'm not gonna lie, that affects me when I know who the person is. It was a guy named Jeff Russo, and the reason I know him so well now is because he's the guy who scored the Fargo series, and I love.
Oh yeah.
I love the score for that series, and not just the theme. I mean, because the theme is basically the same theme from the movie, but the themes throughout the entire show episodically, it's fantastic. Fargo.
Yeah, they were really cool.
They're really good, and this is not the same as that, but I can tell it's the same guy. There's little moments that remind me of Fargo the series, audibly, but it's not necessarily the same thing, and I'm not completely over the moon with it because it kind of reminds me of what Michael Giacchino, one of my other favorite composers, what he did in Rogue One. You see, I like Michael Giacchino. I love his work. But in Rogue One in particular, he very much did not an homage, but I'm keeping it Williams,
Yeah.
And
but without copyright infringement. So you were disappointed at every 5 seconds. You were disappointed that a theme didn't. It was like ba 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 da 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 da.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And see,
it's almost there. Yes.
Yep. And see, I would have rather than him do what you just described, I would have rather Michael Giacchino kind of made it a little bit more his own. I think that would have been more interesting.
Yeah.
Fine, whatever. And so that's kind of how I feel about this because it is Jeff Russo. I can tell, but he's doing a very Star Trek sound-alikey type thing as well. Which I'm not so into. I mean, that's good because, of course, you want to feel like Star Trek, but I also want to hear more of his like personal signature. And the opening theme is fine. It didn't bother me that there wasn't a hook, as you say, and I think over time it may get in my head. The only thing I really don't like about just the theme itself, to me, when you end it with the dun 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 dun, dun, that's a bit corny to me. It being tacked on the way it is.
Yeah, there were like three themes in there, and they were just jammed together.
Yes,
with some filler arpeggios there for a few measures,
yes.
and they didn't quite flow, and they didn't feel like the same big orchestra pumping out the big tune.
That's my beef, exactly, because it opens with classic Star Trek music, it closes with classic Star Trek music, and then, like you said, arpeggio filler is what it felt like in between. That's why it was like it's missing something. There's sound there, there's music there, and it's going up and down, but it does not emotionally move me the way that all of the other ones did.
It emotionally moved me because it was not the Enterprise.
In time, it may grow on me more. I just didn't like the tacked on bit at the end. That would have made it better. Anyway, and then the titles themselves, the way they look, I'm fine with the drafting effect as Kat described it. It like if I shut off the sound and I'm just looking at it, I expect there to be a British narrator describing things a la Hitchhiker's Guide, because I feel like that's what I should be listening to as I'm seeing the images. The Class 4 phaser. And, I expect them to explain everything to me. But I'm okay. I like the look. It's okay. It actually reminds me a lot, if you're playing like the modern big budget video games, like current generation these days in HD, it looks like an opening title sequence for a big budget Star Trek video game, like a brand new state of the art. That's what the opening title sequence would look like. Okay, fine, it's okay. The only thing that I really don't like though about the look is that I am very befuddled by the color choice, like the color scheme for the weird, like the weird Sophia and light brownish. Like, it doesn't seem to match anything to me in what we've seen other than the Klingons' uniforms. That's the only thing that it seems really connected to me. It just seems like it seems like it should be either blue, like a more bluish scheme, or purple, or I don't know, something other than what it is. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't think you're wrong. I think it doesn't match exactly, and I think it's a bit of a departure from all of the other series that begin with space. I mean, it's about space, and this one doesn't have stars in it, and that is. I think
feels,
that,
it feels
I miss
esoteric,
it. I do miss it.
And yeah. So, but it's fine. It's just something that I've always given a lot of thought. Every time I've ever watched any Star Trek series ever, is I've always given, and even the movies, actually, all the different movies, I always give so much time into the opening theme and opening titles. All right, well, we still have more to talk about. I don't know how much we can fit in because this has already gone so long. But if you were to give this some type of rating out of 5, and we're going to kind of rate the first two combined, your overall sense of it, what would you give it out of 5, Carl?
I'd give it a 4. First pilot I've liked.
Tom?
3.5 for me, but very hopeful.
I'll go ahead and go next. If just as an episode of Star Trek or this show, I'd give it a 4. But if I was to change the parameters to judging a first episode of a Star Trek series specifically, I'd give it a 4.5. For the reasons that kind of what Carl's talked about. But just as any old episode, I'll give it a 4. Kat?
5.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right. There's 2 other topics. I don't know how, we've gone long already. I don't know how much you guys, the panel, want to talk about either one.
Well, apparently Kat's drinking wine, so we're in it. We're ready.
Well, there's 2 things. There's 2 things. And you can tell me which one you want to go into first or go into more. And one is the whole speculative side, behind-the-scenes part of Discovery, which we have not discussed, really. And I don't know how much you guys have looked into it. Maybe not at all. And there's that. And then, aside from that, there is that other show, Orville, which, of course, we can't give it its just due, but we can still touch upon. Oh, I don't even know if Kat's seen it yet, but
So I'd have to bow out for both of those because I don't want to speculate about anything on the show. I still want to go into it fresh, even with seeing the premiere and the Orville. I watched the first 15 minutes of it today and stopped watching it.
So you've only seen the first 15 of the first episode?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this about the Orville, Kat. So you stopped watching, and that was because you just weren't feeling it, or you were busy,
I didn't
distracted?
get a chance. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to finish that, and I stopped watching in the first 15 minutes because I was doing other things, and I wanted to watch it, give it a full watch, and not just be doing something at the same time while watching it, because it actually caught my attention, sorta, and I was like, well, maybe I should actually pay attention to it. So it's going to be one of those shows that I have to pay attention to it, which means it might take me longer to get to it.
And also, before I went, Ty, have you seen the Orville? But I don't even have no idea.
Me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
I just watched the first 4 episodes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and Carl, have you seen the first 4 episodes?
I've seen them all. Yes.
All right. Yeah, there's definitely nothing else much other than those 2 topics, and they're especially the Discovery stuff. It gets kind of big, and I'm not going to spoil it for these guys either, because I don't know if I could unknow some of the things I know. I don't know if
I've made a conscious effort not to go into that space. I don't know much about that. Let's just talk about the Orville.
Sounds good to me.
Well,
Look, all right.
No, I'm not going to get into any specifics. Mm-hmm. But I will just say, Well, okay. Well, besides talking about things in the series itself, what about other things going on in the studio behind the scenes which are significant? And even though they won't tell you anything about the story or the plot of Discovery, it still could tell you things because, you know what I mean?
I have been trying to avoid all of that. I mean, honestly, because the first kiss of death is that me and Kat both like it. So series tend to be doomed when Kat and I get very excited about them, and that seems to be the way it is. It is clear that, because this is opening on the streaming service, there is an odd sort of commitment going on regarding the longevity of this series. But I don't know much more than that, and at this point, I'm just going to focus on the series because all the behind-the-scenes stuff. I don't even want to go there yet. Let's just focus. I want to stick with what's going on the screen for now.
All right. But for those who do go out there, I can't remember a time when so much was out there already. I mean, it's because I don't know. It's so there's mountains of information out there about, the broader what's going on here. I mean, not on the screen, but behind the screen. It's voluminous.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I mean, it's crazy. And once you know it, you can't unknow it. And it doesn't mean it's all factual, but there's a preponderance of evidence, shall we say, all around. I mean,
I'm going to try and live blissful ignorance and enjoy the show while I can.
And it's not all doom and gloom, but it is a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. Well, I just said it's not all doom and gloom, but it's the all. It was the all. A lot of things.
Yeah, see, I live naturally in blissful ignorance. That's my natural state. So I don't know any of this stuff. I don't even have to try. So.
Yeah. Well, all right. So there's that, and there's a lot about it There's a lot of it out there for those who want to seek it. It's a lot, and it's pretty nuts. Without again getting into that speculation, when you start reading up on it, it's crazy how much of it it comes from legal stuff that happened long in the past with Star Trek. And it's I've gone down the rabbit hole of information, and it's so bizarre. The apparent reasons why things are just crazy in Star Trek land behind the scenes, because of it all goes back to who has the TV rights, who has the movie rights, and it's crazy how much that never ends, that legal fiasco, and how much it ends up affecting everything, whether it's Discovery or whatever.
So maybe in later episodes you can describe to us why certain choices were made,
or how it's affected the Abrams films. It's crazy how much the legal politics just like overwhelm Star Trek. It's nuts. But anyway, there's that. Now the Orville. Again, we'll. I'm sure. I don't know. Well, I don't know if you guys know too. This isn't really a spoiler per se, but they're kind of dividing up the airing schedule for Discovery, kind of like what they do with The Walking Dead and things, with their seasons. So we're gonna have some Discovery downtime. Is what I'm trying to say. Like during the series. So I'm sure during the downtime or whenever we'll have time to get much more in depth on Orville, because there's no way this is happening simultaneously. I'm talking Discovery and Orville, like it's all too much, and I think that the Orville deserves more than that. Well, this conversation went a bit long, and as you heard, Kat didn't want to continue, so we're just going to go ahead and have an early break here. And if you're still interested in those topics like the Orville, then stay tuned for the next episode, which will follow on this feed. So until next time, this is Eric.
This is Kat.
This is Carl.
And this is Tom.
And even if you have to mutiny on your own captain,
set phasers to stunning.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Yeah, I know that's not the catchphrase. I've forgotten the RBG catchphrase, so I'm gonna just substitute that until I go back. I forgot our own catchphrase.